Axel Heiberg Island is an island in the Qikiqtaaluk Region, Nunavut, Canada. Located in the Arctic Ocean, it is the 31st largest island in the world and Canada's 7th largest island. According to Statistics Canada, it has an area of 43,178 square kilometers. Named after Axel Heiberg, one of the larger members of the Canadian Arctic archipelago, it is also a member of the Sverdrup Islands and Queen Elizabeth Islands. It is known for its unusual fossil forests which date from the Eocene period. Owing to the lack of mineralization in many of the forest specimens, the traditional characterization of fossilization fails for these forests, and mummification may be a clearer description. It is clear that the Axel Heiberg forest was a high-latitude wetland forest. History: Axel Heiberg Island has been inhabited in the past by Inuit people, but was uninhabited by the time it was named by Otto Sverdrup, who explored it in 1901. He named it after Axel Heiberg, financial director of the Norwegian Ringnabri, which sponsored the expedition. Other explorers visited the island during the early 20th century, during which time it was claimed by Norway until 1930. It is now part of Nunavut Territory, Canada. It wasn't until the late 1940s that the island was aerially photographed by the United States Army Air Force's Operation Polaris. In 1955, two geologists of the Geological Survey of Canada, N.J. Macmillan and Souther, traversed the interior as part of Operation Franklin. Macmillan's observations of Bund Glacier, in northwest Axel Heiberg Island, are the earliest glaciological observations on the ground to have found the way into a scientific publication. In 1959, scientists from McGill University explored Expedition Fjord in central Axel Heiberg Island. This resulted in the establishment of the McGill Arctic Research Station, constructed 8 kilometers inland from Expedition Fjord in 1960. It consists of a small research hut, a cookhouse and 2 temporary structures that can comfortably accommodate 8 to 12 persons. The station was busiest during the early 1960s, during which a population of 20 was present. The station is now only used for specific studies during the summer months. In the summer of 1972, a British Army Mountaineering Association expedition resulted in the naming of Scaife Glacier. During the summer of 1986, a Canadian expedition headed by Dr. James Basinger set out to investigate a very unusual fossil forest on Axel Heiberg. The findings of these and subsequent expeditions have since been popularly reported in Canada. Over 40 million years ago, during the Eocene era, a forest of tall trees flourished on Axel Heiberg Island. The trees reached up to 35 meters in height. Some may have grown for 500 to 1,000 years. At the time, the polar climate was warm, but the winters were still continuously dark for 3 months long. As the trees fell, the fine sediment in which the forest grew protected the plants. Instead of turning into petrified stone fossils, they were ultimately mummified by the cold, dry Arctic climate, and only recently exposed by erosion. As late as 1999, the preservation of this unique site was a concern, as the fossil wood was easily damaged and eroded once exposed. There were concerns that wood was being taken by Arctic cruise ship tourists, and that the site was being disturbed by Canadian military helicopters from a nearby base, and even by scientists themselves in the studies. There were calls for more protection for the area. It currently has no official status, in part because land claims had to be settled. But now Nunavut is looking at how best to protect the fossil forest, possibly by setting up a territorial park to be called en.According. where there are trees. Interesting animal fossils have been discovered on the island, including a remarkably preserved specimen of an ancient aurora Schleese turtle. Glaciation. White Glacier is a valley glacier occupying 38.7 square kilometers in the Expedition Fjord area of Axel Heiberg Island. It extends in elevation from 56 to 1,782 meters above sea level, a range which, as noted by Diogenes, is exceeded only by Devon Ice Cap in the World List of Glaciers with Measured Mass Balance. Ice thickness reaches or exceeds 400 meters, its maximum extension in recent history, marking the advance of the glacier in response to the cooling of the Little Ice Age, was reached not earlier than the late 18th century, and more probably at the beginning of the 20th century. There is evidence that the retreat of the terminus, previously at about 5 meters per year, is decelerating. White Glacier has been the subject of many papers in the glaciological literature since 1960. E.g., Muller was the source of a now classical diagram elaborating and illustrating the concept of glacier facies. Population. The island is uninhabited except for one small seasonal research station operated by McGill University. Lost Hammer Spring. The Lost Hammer Spring, located in the central west region of the island, is the coldest and saltiest of all Arctic springs described to date. It is characterized by perennial hypersaline discharge at sub-zero temperatures, flowing to the surface through a hollow, 2 meters high cone-shaped salt tufa structure. Continuous gas emissions from the spring indicate an underlying thermogenic methane source. On the basis of these properties, this spring is considered a significant astrobiology analog site for possible habitats currently present on Mars and the cold moons Europa and Enceladus.